Welcome into a new episode of the Bengals Beat podcast. Jason, happy foggy Wednesday to you. This sure feels like Cincinnati winter.
Yeah, we were spoiled there for a few days, and I hope Bengals fans really thoroughly enjoyed that weather on Sunday and the game, and that was so fantastic, and that weather and the way the Bengals performed, and that was probably the last, well, if you go to Tampa, I guess, here in December.
What was more impressive, the sunny and 75 or Joe Burrow's performance?
That's a tough one because they were both great.
Yeah. Gosh, the more I looked at that performance, I mean, he really was as accurate as I've seen him be in a long time.
Yeah.
And as we mentioned, you know, just because Atlanta's defense isn't good shouldn't take away from Burrow's performance, the offense's performance. But there's a lot of interesting things to talk about besides what you and I are both going to be for Halloween with this game, because this game, I think, is going to be a lot closer than last week's game.
Yeah, I am writing my predictions right now, and then I came over to do the podcast, and I'm going back. I was kind of hoping maybe you would help me because I just was typing, and then I looked up, and I'm like, this is such a hard game to pick.
The Browns have lost 4 in a row.
The Browns have lost 4 in a row.
Almost beat the Ravens.
But you look at, it's like you're just going back and forth. The trends, the Bengals have struggled against the Browns in recent years. They've lost 7 of their last 8 against the Browns. You could say, if Burrow would have played in Cleveland last year, you'd like the Bengals to win that game, but he didn't, and they didn't. The Bengals have been not good historically in night primetime road games. The Browns are, even though they've lost 4, they are, you look at some of those scores and you're like,
they're a tough out.
They are a tough out. And yet, after the game, after they lose to Baltimore, players are melting down in the locker room, yelling at each other. And when you see things or hear things like that, you're like, oh, they've lost 4 in a row. Players are yelling at each other. This is
the get right game.
This is really the game the Bengals need to step on their throats and just completely put the Browns out of their misery for the rest of the season or whatever. And in the flip side, the Bengals then make this really a clear-cut 2-horse race between them and the Ravens. They get their first AFC North division victory of the year. So I keep going back and forth, but I think the thing that I keep going back to is that Joe Burrow is in a rhythm right now, and I think that's going to be a rhythm that some team like the Cleveland Browns, that they're not going to stop that.
Well, here's the catch: the Browns have the Bengals number for sure.
Big time.
And Joe Burrow said it today. He said, I haven't beaten the Browns since I got here.
Right. 0-3.
This game was circled. But here are 3 things that I'm really focusing on. I spent some time this morning researching the Browns. First of all, let's talk about this one. The weather is going to be a factor in this game.
Calling for showers that night.
Because what did we talk about sitting next to each other? Eventually, the Bengals are going to have to run the ball. They're probably going to have to run the ball some in Cleveland more than they want to, because if it's raining, you're going to want to ride Mixon. So I'm going to pull it up right now and see what if they do the time.
I looked at it right before he came in. It was calling for 30% showers, but we'll see what it is when you pull it up. You're exactly right. That's one of the things I'm torn about, because the Browns can run the football. Nick Chubb leads the NFL in rushing. The team itself
every year
is number 3 in rushing in the NFL. The Bengals cannot run the ball. And if it is raining and if it turns out to be just a total downpour for that football game.
You'd favor the Browns.
Favor the Browns.
So I pull it up right now. Monday the 31st, it says 54% chance.
During the day.
Let's see if it can give me hourly. Gosh, don't you love weather.com?
Yeah, like I said, I think I was and it was set 30% at night.
Well, it's too far out to give the night, but yeah. Yeah. Anyways, so if that happens, that's a factor. But here are some other things. Staying on that subject, I screenshotted this because I wanted to talk to you about this. Against the New Orleans Saints, Joe Burrow had 40 dropbacks, 10 handoffs, scored 30 points. Against the Falcons, 45 dropbacks, 18 handoffs, 35 points. 40 to 45 dropbacks. What are they going to drop him back 50 times next week? Well,
if it's raining, no.
Right. But I'm glad that that's working, but that's a lot of dropbacks, and I don't think that's sustainable for the rest of the year. The run game's going to have to come into factor here, but them, sprinkling and mixing here and there, I think the last couple of weeks has helped.
They came out against Atlanta definitely looking to pass. It was pass all day. It was a terrible pass defense, no pass rush or very little. And, so they didn't really need to really go to Mixon very much. They did go to him there in that goal line situation. I thought that was good play calling where they, he got stuffed on the one call and then they went right back to him and he plowed it in. I think you and I are going to be sitting here a month from now probably saying the same thing about the running game, is that it's not very good. It's giving them a little bit. Is that going to be good enough, though, when they're playing the Buffalo Bills and they're playing the Kansas City Chiefs, when the weather's cold, when you playing against teams that are going to force you to be more balanced?
Yeah, that's the thing. The Bengals are never going to be a run-first team. The Bengals are never going to be the Browns. And they've got a pretty dang good passing offense. They're always going to lean in that direction. But what you're looking for more over the next couple of weeks is to see if you can achieve more balance. And that's really only going to come into a factor of after the bye, I think, is when it's going to be essentially important. But going back to this game specifically, the real kicker here is if Denzel Ward is going to play. He's dealing with a concussion. He's still in the protocol, which I think is significant that he's still in it because it happened in early October. He's missed 2 games. There has not been a cornerback, and I've asked Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, both personally. Jamar came on the podcast this offseason in studio and mentioned this guy's name. And T. Higgins, I asked him too. They all said Denzel Ward is the toughest cornerback for them to go against. He picked Joe Burrow off last year for a pick 6. He's won against them, and they have a ton of respect for him. But if he can't play, you'd have to feel good about the Bengals receivers in this matchup. And then you pretty much, I think if the Bengals can contain Myles Garrett and not let him just absolutely wreck the game, the Browns, I don't think, have enough firepower on offense with Njoku out. Yes, they have Amari Cooper and Chubb, but you'd have to give the nod to the Bengals offense there. But Myles Garrett, I've seen him. I've seen him and Jadeveon Clowney absolutely terrorize the Bengals offensive line.
Yeah.
So, and it's been a while since Bengals have seen a top-tier pass rusher.
Week 2. Dallas.
And Myles Garrett at 6 sacks. Top 5 player. So.
No, you're leaning toward the Browns winning this one, aren't you?
No, I'm still going to pick the Bengals.
Oh, yeah.
But I know this is so cliche. No, I think the Bengals are going to win, and I think they have to win. I think you can't mess around in the division like we talked about on Monday. Like, your quickest and easiest path to securing a playoff spot is to win your division. And what you want is for that Week 17 game when you host the Baltimore Ravens to be for the division title. That's how you want things to be. And that's going to involve you beating the Browns potentially twice. And you should beat the Browns without Deshaun Watson, with Jacoby Brissett as quarterback. Like, you're the better team. Mm-hmm. Go on the road in a place that you haven't particularly played that well. I know they won there last year, but that was not, no starter played. Go on Halloween, keep the foot on the gas on the momentum. And if they're able to go beat the Browns, I think that will say a lot about where this team is headed.
I agree with all that, and I'm the same way. I feel like this is a coin flip game, but you have to pick someone, and I'm going with the Bengals. I think the Bengals, the offense has found its rhythm. We know we just talked about its issues or its issue, but it's getting better every week. The overall offense. The defense is still, even without Reeder, even without Wilson, and is Wilson? Do we know his status?
Zach said he's optimistic about him this week, so hopefully they get him back. That'd be a help. And
this is totally a gut feeling, and I don't like going on a gut feeling on some of these predictions, but when it's so close like this, my gut tells me after watching that Bengals team last week that they are now in some kind of a rhythm that, the defending AFC champions are feeling it, so to speak. And the defending AFC champions that are feeling it should go into Cleveland and should win. And I think they will. And I think it's going to be probably a lot. It could be another 3-point, 2-point game, which seems to be, kind of there prior to last weekend. But I think this is going to be a divisional rivalry game, and so I think it's going to be close, but the Bengals are going to pull it out.
Yeah, well,
I don't have a score in my head yet.
Yeah, same. I am going to pick the Bengals, but I definitely think it's going to be a close game, and I think the Bengals will be in a great spot if they're able to come into that final game against the Panthers. And then you come out of the bye, you're healthy, and then you head to Pittsburgh. And I watched that Sunday Night Football game. They're just a mess on offense. So I think you can mark that one down as a win. Yeah. And then it starts to get interesting because then you go to Tennessee. Tennessee's playing really well right now. Then the Chiefs. So then you start to hit the stretch of your schedule where, it's go time. But you've built yourself a little cushion, which is what the Bengals are hoping to do. So we talked about some potential X factors in this game. I want to ask you, and you don't know what I'm about to ask you. I'm putting you on the spot. 7 weeks into this season, now that you are following the Bengals, watching them every week, going to games when they're home, what has surprised you most in your first year of covering the Cincinnati Bengals as closely as you have?
I think the biggest thing that's surprised is a positive thing, and that's that their defense, all, and we've talked about this before, is so much talk about the offense and so much talk about upgrading the offensive line. And so I'll give you a positive surprise and one that I'm surprised on more of the negative side, if that's okay. The defense has been, I think, a positive surprise. They've been really good, and certainly they've, struggled against the run the last few weeks, and yet they've still won. They've still found a way. And let's be honest, the Falcons, that's what they do. They run the ball. They can't pass the ball. So, and they've had a few injuries, but they've still been able to find a way to win, and certainly they're getting help from the offense. Now, the negative surprise has been the offensive line. Obviously, it's playing better now, but that was a real disaster out of the gate. And I think probably anyone going into the seaon if you're a casual fan. And, I'm sure, folks like yourself who were at training camp and, you saw where Collins didn't practice most of training camp and the Jackson Carman thing. But I'm just saying, even going into training camp, if you would have said that this offensive line was going to be darn near disastrous in the early going, I think you would have said, oh, you're crazy. That's a huge surprise. It has obviously the chemistry developed. Zach Taylor talked about that after the Falcons game, how the chemistry is really there. But I think, they still gave up 3 sacks last week. It's not a perfected work by any means, but it's certainly getting better. And so, all the money they spent there, the new players, the proven players. I think that was more of a kind of a negative, on the negative side, surprise. How about yourself?
Well, if I had to say, I would say probably the offensive line and how good Ted Karras and Kappa.
Oh, you're saying that's on a good thing.
Like a good surprise.
Oh,
like I obviously knew they were going to be better, but Karras was kind of a wild card. Like there was a reason he was available, right? Like he's kind of bounced around from New England, Miami. Like he wasn't the top tier center of free agency. And it sounds like that ended up being a slam dunk of a signing. And Kappa, we don't talk about him a lot, but that's good when you're not talking. And Cordell Volson's played really well.
Yeah.
So I would say probably the biggest surprise to me has been how well they've turned out as a unit.
I think I know what you're going to say is the negative surprise.
I don't think I have a negative surprise.
All right.
But
I won't mention it then.
So I don't know. I just thought it would be, kind of halfway through the season, a good check-in point with you to kind of see what surprised you.
Yeah, those are the 2 things. Mm-hmm. Can I add a third?
Sure.
Just kind of how much Joe Mixon has dropped off, I think, has been a pretty big surprise too. The life cycle of the NFL running back, you're seeing it right now. But again, I think going into the season, I don't think people thought it would be this bad for him.
I want to reserve my comments on that until we see a game where they actually have to use him.
Fair enough.
So, you're on to something.
This bad to this point.
We'll be talking about this one for the next year. Yeah. But going back to the upcoming game against the Browns on Halloween, we are going to bring in Charlie Goldsmith to talk about the matchup.
All right, we got Charlie in the chair. And Charlie, what's in your notepad this week as you look at the matchup between the Bengals and the Browns?
Yeah, the Browns on both sides of the ball are a team where I'm not sure what they're going to be structurally, specifically like what personnel groupings are they going to use. They can't really run the ball with the same style they've had before because their linemen have been hurt and their tight ends are dropping like flies. Yep. And defensively, they've had to change a lot of their defensive identity because they've been so weak at safety and linebacker. They've tried 40 different things trying to figure out an identity there, and they haven't come together as a group at all yet so far this season. It's a Browns team I'm having a very hard time figuring out, and I think that's why you've seen them struggle this season.
No, that's kind of goes with what Kelsey and I were talking about. It's they are a hard team to figure out, and this is a hard game to kind of predict, given the recent history between these two teams. What do you like, or what do you see if the Bengals are going to be successful on offense? How are they going to do that?
Yeah, well, respectfully to the guy, Grant Delpit's been one of the worst safeties in coverage in the entire NFL this season. The Browns middle linebacker, Anthony Walker, he is the straw that stirred the drink. He's out for the year, and his replacement is now on IR. So the Browns have no consistency in pass coverage over the middle of the field. Their second-year linebacker, J.O.K. is his nickname from Notre Dame. He is a fast, athletic player who has been out of position at times this season. And Johnson, their other safety, hasn't provided the consistency they've needed. So that has been that's how when you're Bailey Zappi, you torch the Browns. When you have easy throws right in front of you over the field because of lapses in coverage and players who aren't making the right decisions when they're put in conflict in space. And that's how you beat the Browns.
So are you thinking this could be more of a, dink and dunk kind of game for Joe Burrow and his receivers, or do you see that they could go downfield some like they did against the Falcons?
I mean, it wasn't dink and dunk when who was it? Joe Flacco had the 60-yard bomb or whatever it was because no one was guarding him because of a lapse in coverage, and that's what you've been seeing consistently in Cleveland. The big thing about who, quote-unquote, is going to go off, that starts with whether or not Denzel Ward's healthy. He's been in concussion protocol for a bit. I think he is the toughest matchup for Jamar Chase in the NFL, so if he's healthy, obviously that's a huge part of the game. But when he's not healthy, everyone kind of has to shuffle. They have to move Newsome outside. They have to find either a third safety, or they've been using Greedy Williams or guys like that filling it, or AJ Green, a corner they have inside, not the same guys. So they kind of have to pick, do we want to put our best corners on the outside and let Boyd go? Again, the other decision is having a weaker corner on the outside, probably on T. Higgins.
And Kelsey and I talked about this before you came in. If it's raining, and again, who knows? But if the Bengals have to rely on their running game, I mean, it sounds to me like if it's a nice night, that Joe Burrow should be able to carve up that defense. But if the Bengals have to run the ball, what do you see in that Browns defense that says, yeah, they're going to be successful, or that's going to be tough for Mixon and crew?
The Browns have one of the worst rushing defenses in all football, and what's been notable too is for example, when they played the Patriots, and obviously you do it when you face the Ravens, that's led to them bringing everybody in because they are now allocating resources to stopping the run that, say, the Bengals don't need to allocate because the Bengals can win in 6 or with 6 in a way the Browns need 7 to win with, say. The Browns' defensive tackles, man, have dropped off significantly. They have a pair of good edge rushers, but it's a front that's not doing enough because they are not getting anything at all up the middle, specifically against the run. That's probably the weakness of the entire defense when you look at what people are saying around in Cleveland. I think the Bengals, when they've run under shotgun, or I know they have when they've run under shotgun, been a very efficient rushing offense, just statistically. The rushing under shotgun offense has worked, and when you face a front that's weak up the middle, you'll probably get more opportunities.
What's your prediction in this one?
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland's kind of become the book's kind of out on Cleveland in that Brissett his passing attempts have skyrocketed over the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Chubb's been getting the ball less because that's what you do.
I noticed that.
And on the flip side, we talked about the defensive issues I noticed as well. It's a very, very inconsistent offense, and as we mentioned, a defense with some massive holes. Probably Bengals 24-20 would be my first guess right now.
Another 3-4 point game.
3-4 point game, yep. It does. It has the feeling of that's going to be a field goal type of game.
Even if the Bengals are better in almost every position.
But let's be honest, y'all. Isn't that pretty much the NFL?
Right.
Everything's a one-score game, right?
Yes.
Well, a lot of things. Charlie? Good stuff. At @CharlieG__ on Twitter.
2 underscores.
2 underscores. That's what I said. Underscore. No space. Thanks, Charlie, and
thanks,
we'll see your coverage from Cleveland.
Thanks.
Thanks again to Charlie Goldsmith for coming in on talking the X's and O's of the game. And Kelsey, any final thoughts as this team gets ready to go to Cleveland?
Let's have some fun on Halloween night. Come on.
Yeah.
No spooky. I'm not into the whole scary, that type of situation. So no scary performances on Monday night. Let's go have some fun on Halloween.
You just
see what this Bengals team is really made of.
It just feels like a loss would be goodness. That's
the exact reaction.
Yeah.
Yes. Perfect.
And I feel like
Perfect
that's how the fans are going to feel. It's I thought we were past this kind of thing.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. Anyway.
But I'm looking forward to a big Bearcats game on Saturday first.
Huge.
So,
down in Orlando, UCF.
And I'll be able to watch it because Cleveland Monday
night.
So I'm not
I was
gonna be
at
on
Luke
the road.
Fickell's press conference yesterday. And
I'm not going to be on the road, so I'm looking forward to watch the Bearcats, then gear up for Monday night. But it should be a good time. Hope it's a good game. Like you said, avoid the and come back home because that next week, it's going to be a short week for them against a team that on paper they should beat. But the Panthers beat the Bucks. So, like you're saying, what's going on in the NFL right now is crazy. And it's back to our point. The Bengals can really help themselves and put themselves in that conversation. Everybody only wants to talk about the Bills and the Chiefs right now in the AFC. If the Bengals go into the bye week at 6-3, you're going to have to start talking about them as contenders because, oh, by the way, they did beat the Kansas City Chiefs twice last year. And
that's right.
If they take care of their business, you don't have the but with the Bengals. You're just rolling with them. Yeah, they're firing on all cylinders. They figured this thing out.
No doubt. At Kelsey L. Conway on Twitter, at J. Williams Cincy with a Y on Twitter.
Hit us up.
Hit us up. Don't forget to check out and sign up on Cincinnati.com for our Bengals newsletter. Just keep, more ways to get our content in addition to this podcast. Lacey on Cincinnati.com, on the Cincinnati.com mobile app, Twitter. Where else are we? Your videos from
I'm all over the place.
Your post-game videos. I see Facebook ads for Kelsey's coverage, so all kinds of places. But definitely sign up for that newsletter. And I think that's it.
We need to come up with what's our saying or something.
Kelsey out.
Thanks for tuning in, guys.